Hi everyone, welcome back to the I Will Get Lean podcast. In today's episode, we're going to talk about low carb diet. And I'm sure you've heard of it because it's everywhere. But I want to particularly talk about how the low carb diet affects hormonal conditions like PCOS, hypothyroidism, and it also makes your fat loss journey just feel 10x harder. And why does that really happen? So before we begin, I want to first highlight the amount of influence that I'm noticing nowadays on social media around low carb. Wherever you see, everybody is telling you to go low carb. And if you're not doing low carb, you're doing something wrong. Maybe it's a keto influencer telling you that unless you do low carb, you're not going to lose the stubborn fat. Or maybe it's your doctor telling you that unless you just eat salads and cut out the rice and roti, you're not going to improve your PCOS symptoms. So regardless of the amount of knowledge you have, it's very easy to get influenced to follow a low carb approach, especially for a condition like PCOS. So you try it. You decide to change up your diet. You cut out all the delicious carbs, especially white rice. And you might lose some pounds on the scale too, but something still feels off. You realize that you have a lot less energy during the day. And hunger just seems to keep growing every passing day. Some nights you're sleeping hungry, but you kind of write it off thinking that looks like this is how fitness should look like. But your cravings continue to get worse. Your digestion now feels off. You're bloated all the time. And the scale also stops moving. And in some extreme cases, we notice that PCOS symptoms like acne or your period, they just completely go out of whack. So generally at this point, most people start questioning, is this what health should look like? Is this me really being healthy? Or am I doing something wrong? Now here's the part that no one talks about. Weight loss does not mean hormonal balance, especially for PCOS. And we need to first accept that PCOS is not an excessive fat condition, it's actually a hormonal imbalance condition. Carbs are not the enemy. So if you cut out too much of carbs, you're going to notice mood swings, energy crashes, your period going away, and just PCOS worsening its grip on your life. You know, the same diet that helped your trainer lose her belly fat is not going to help you. Because biologically, the way your hormones function and work with energy and fat is very different from how women with PCOS actually lose fat. So today we're going to dive deep into topics like what exactly is PCOS, how is insulin connected to this entire equation, especially in PCOS, and why carbs are not the enemy for you in particular. Then we're going to dive deep into what is your BMR and metabolism in the world of PCOS, how the amount of carbs in your diet impact hormones, again, in the world of PCOS. We're going to dive specifically deep into thyroid, into your sleep hormones, into your stress hormones. And then we're going to discuss how and what is the best diet approach that you could follow so that you're able to continue losing weight with PCOS while eating carbs. Like, what is that exact strategy? And towards the end of the podcast, I'm going to give you some tips that have worked for other PCOS clients who have followed a more sustainable and hormone-first nutrition approach. So let's dive in and begin with some foundational topics. I want to first talk about what a PCOS-friendly diet looks like. Now, you've probably done a low-carb diet without realizing, because almost every single PCOS-friendly diet plan out there is nothing but a low-carb diet packaged with a wrapper of PCOS-friendly. So you might have just thought that, okay, let me cut out rice, oats, millets, quinoa. Let me focus on eating more of protein and veggies because that's going to help my body not hold on to water, and so I will lose fat faster. You might have completely given up your favorite Indian foods like poha, upma, dosa just because they are carb-rich, and that probably is causing your PCOS to worsen. You might have been told that unless you eat more protein and less carbs, you're not going to lose weight. And some of this advice actually backfires in very sinister ways, because when you decide to go on a low-carb diet, you are not only cutting out satiety from your life, but you're also cutting out a lot of the healthy fibers, which actually help with your gut health. A lot of hormone boosting foods, because when you opt for a carb source in your plate, let's say you're opting for a sweet potato, it's more than just X grams of carbohydrates. There are things that go beyond just the macro split. So for example, sweet potato contains carotenoids along with soluble fiber, but carotenoids mainly help with estrogen detoxification. So in certain types of PCOS, we notice that estrogen spikes way more. And because of that, there are a whole host of other symptoms that come about, like painful cramps during periods, excessive, like sweating at night, called as night sweats. And oftentimes, including sweet potato helps reduce some of those symptoms because it helps with getting rid of that excess estrogen hormone. Now, if you completely cut out carbs, how are you going to get those amazing benefits? A lot of people skip fruits and lentils thinking that, hey, it's just fructose. I don't really need lentils because I'm getting protein from meat. Well, did you know lentils contain a whole host of micronutrients that help you with digestion and bloating, especially because women with PCOS have natural gut dysbiosis, which means that your gut health, your gut bacteria is already imbalanced because of the hormonal imbalance. And so when you cut out foods that actually help your gut, what's happening? You're further worsening the symptoms of PCOS. Oh, and the big one, avoid sugar. But did you know avoiding sugar does not automatically make you lose weight, and neither does it automatically correct your PCOS? So bottom line is that carbs are not just X grams of carbs on your macro calculator. They contain fiber, antioxidants, micronutrients, and hormone supporting attributes, which are very, very hard to replace through supplementation. Now, some of the hormones that carbs influence are, you have leptin, which is your satisfaction hormone, ghrelin, your hunger hormone, cortisol, as you know. So PCOS is not just about insulin spikes. It's actually more about boosting hormonal balance, bringing your hormones to their natural levels so that the rest of your body functions as normally as it possibly can. But the goal of these PCOS-friendly plans is not to boost your hormone health. The goal is to just help you see a drop on the scale, which is why they cut carbs. Because as you know, 1 gram of carb holds on to 4 molecules of water. So when you cut carbs from your diet, within a day or so, you will notice a whoosh effect where all of the water that your body was holding on to now gets excreted out. So you suddenly see a drop on the scale, you feel flatter, leaner, and so you start thinking that, oh, this diet is working for me. And this is the classic trap that a lot of women with PCOS fall into. And I understand why, because like I said, social media is promoting a low-carb diet for PCOS. But I often wonder, where did this originate from? So what happened was, women are told that PCOS is a result of insulin resistance, which is true. So we need to do things to avoid insulin spikes. Okay, so now carbs cause insulin spikes. So cutting carbs should help, right? So a few women decided to try it out and they lost weight fast. Makes sense, right? And because of this story got amplified on social media, where it started becoming like the only solution to managing PCOS weight loss. But no one talked about what's happening inside the body. Everyone just looked at the number on the scale. And so they assumed that weight loss means PCOS will go away. But PCOS is not a weight problem. PCOS is a hormone problem. It's inside you. It's the way your hormones don't work properly. So weight gain in PCOS is just a symptom. So fixing the symptom is not going to solve the problem. You go on a low-carb diet, see the weight loss, it gets too painful to continue the journey, so you give it a break, you go on a binge fast, you regain all the weight really, really fast because internally when you went on low-carb the first time, your hormones shifted a bit and not in the right direction. And so when you regain all the weight, you panic and you do low carb again. And then you blame yourself that I'm not disciplined enough. And this is how the yo-yo dieting cycle continues. So doctors, influencers, Everybody tells you to cut carbs because they want to show you that initial weight loss and make you feel like the diet is working for you. But I want to explain a little bit more about what happens inside your body at a hormonal level when you go on a low carb diet, because that'll give you a deeper understanding of why this approach it only works short term, and that also not very well if you have PCOS. So here's the truth. PCOS is less about insulin spikes and more about how your body is using insulin. And depending on the types of PCOS, as we know, we have 4 main types of PCOS, and some women also have a combination of PCOS. The way your body uses carbohydrates for energy also changes. Now, in some women, we notice that following a low-carb diet initially causes fat loss, but then it very quickly starts depleting muscle tissue, where the body starts eating muscle to supplement for the energy that carbs should be giving it. And in some PCOS types, we notice that if you cut out carbs for too long, for an extended period of time, then it could lead to hypothyroidism, which is another metabolic disorder. And one of the main symptoms of hypothyroidism is also weight gain. So while the low-carb diet might help certain symptoms for PCOS, it might completely worsen other symptoms and also at some degree damage your metabolism, which will take a long time to recover. So let's talk about what PCOS actually does to your body. Now, PCOS is not a period condition. It's not the absence of periods alone, or it's not just the presence of fat gain alone. It's a full body condition. It's called as polycystic ovarian syndrome. It affects how your body makes and uses hormones. Now, some of the symptoms of PCOS are acne, facial hair, irregular periods, but it also governs how your body manages and handles fat. This is why it is much harder to lose weight when you have PCOS, even if you're consistent. So the common feeling that women complain about is, I'm doing everything right, I'm counting every macro, I'm doing all of my workouts, even managing stress, but still I did not even lose 500 grams this week. And that's because PCOS is influenced more by insulin, stress, thyroid, and all of those internal hormones, which we frankly don't know how to boost, right? We don't know the mechanisms, we don't know specific foods that we need to eat to make your body more insulin sensitive. So we follow the blanket advice of cut carbs. Let me just cut carbs and I will lose fat. Now, at a biological level, the PCOS universe has 30% higher cortisol baseline, which means if you get stressed, if you have PCOS and you get stressed, your cortisol will spike 30% higher than your friends who doesn't have PCOS. With insulin, your insulin is 30% lower, it's lazier than your friends. Your thyroid hormones are more sensitive to to slow down, especially if you cut carbs, than your friends. So the bounce back rate of your metabolism is also much slower. So if your friend does a crash diet and then decides to, change her ways and start eating healthy again, her body might bounce back quickly and adapt to the more, healthier diet. But in your case, you might notice your body still resists it and your metabolism continues to stay slower. And so even if you correct your ways, you might notice that, okay, it's not really working for me. And this difference in the biology actually frustrates a lot of women. And I can empathize, because what do you do when at a biological level, you're at a disadvantage when it comes to losing body fat? And I see a lot of women blame themselves, blame their discipline, their focus, because they're not getting results. And one of the key reasons they're not getting results is the low-carb diet. So once you realize that you need to work with your biology, you need to work inside your PCOS universe and not try to fight it, or not try to copy somebody who does not even belong to that universe, everything will start to click. So there's nothing wrong with you, there's nothing wrong with your consistency, but there is everything wrong with your plan. Now that we've understood what PCOS truly is, I want to talk about the insulin resistance, which is the root cause of PCOS. And even for something like insulin resistance, it's different. You might think is, okay, now this is a common thread between me and my friend. It's actually not, because the way your body responds to insulin resistance is different from your friends. Now, I'm sure if you have PCOS, you've been asked to get your blood reports done. And when you do get your blood reports and a medical professional tells you that, oh, everything is normal, there's nothing fundamentally wrong there, I feel a lot of people are misled, because your blood reports might be normal, like your sugar levels might be normal. But if your fasting insulin levels are really, really high, then that is an indicator that your body is overproducing insulin. So what this really means is that your pancreas is producing insulin at night when you're sleeping, because of which next day morning when you get your tests done, the fasting insulin levels are high. And when the body overproduces anything, excess of anything is bad and it has consequences. And so that's why the effects of high insulin in your body leads to your body being more stressed and inflamed, because it's a cascade effect. High insulin affects other hormones, which affects other things. And eventually your body is not in a state of balance. Studies have shown that if you have PCOS, you might be dealing with selective insulin resistance, which is the kind of insulin resistance where the body picks and chooses parts where it rejects insulin. So for in PCOS, what we've seen is that the muscles are more insulin resistant, or they reject insulin function, but ovaries do not. And that's not a good thing. Both actually contribute to the symptoms of PCOS. And let's dive deep into it. So in the muscle cells, what happens is that insulin is the one which sends the GLUT4 transponders to the surface of the cell to receive the glucose. Now in PCOS, since your muscles are resisting insulin, GLUT4 never really receives the glucose. So the muscles don't get enough glucose, and the body does not understand what to do, so it continues to overproduce more and more insulin. As your muscles are not in a fed state because they've not received any glucose, they send signals to the pancreas to be like, hey, we need glucose. Can you send your messenger? Can you send insulin so that, we get glucose? But like I said, since the muscles resist insulin, glucose doesn't enter the cells at all. Now let's look at the ovaries for a bit. They respond to insulin like normal. But since your body is overproducing insulin, because remember we talked about how your muscles are rejecting insulin, this excess insulin actually triggers your ovaries to produce something called as testosterone. So in layman terms, your ovaries overreact to the excess insulin. So in your ovaries, we have something called as the theca cells, and excess insulin triggers these theca cells to produce more testosterone. Now this excess insulin also makes your ovaries more sensitive to producing the LH hormone, which is the ovulating hormone, which is called as your luteinizing hormone, right? So when we have high insulin and we have more LH hormone produced, we have even more testosterone created. So now the ovary has two pathways for overproducing testosterone. Testosterone is nothing but the male part of the hormone, right? And this is called as, and also known as androgens. So which is why your ovaries get into a hyperandrogenic state. So just to do a quick recap, selective insulin resistance in PCOS means your muscles are rejecting insulin, so they're not getting enough glucose, which is why you feel tired all the time. And your ovaries are overreacting to insulin and producing a lot more testosterone than your body can handle as a female. Now, the common advice given here is balance your blood sugar and everything will get fixed. But I'm sure you can understand that why balancing your blood sugar does not really affect insulin production. It's not a carb issue. Like, you could eat clean, you could even do the ketogenic diet, but that does not make your muscles more sensitive to insulin. That does not help your ovaries not overreact to excess insulin. The problem isn't glucose, it's how the different tissues in your body, like your muscles versus your ovaries, actually respond to the insulin. So here's how to detect if you have selective insulin resistance. So your blood reports say that you have normal sugar, but your fasting insulin is high. You're tired pretty much at 2 p.m. every single day, even though you've slept well, you've eaten a balanced breakfast, balanced lunch. You have insane carb cravings, irregular periods, acne showing up randomly, hair thinning, hoarseness of voice, facial hair showing up. So all of these symptoms point to the fact that your body is overproducing androgens. And that's happening because there is extra insulin, which is proven by your fasting insulin levels being high. Now, how do you fix this, right? So you need more insulin sensitizing strategies. This could include a few supplementation, but it definitely goes beyond just taking metformin. You need to focus on building muscle and ensuring that you have muscle activation going on. So stop doing just cardio. We need more hormone-aware nutrition, so eating foods that actually boost your hormonal health inside, not just drop the number on the scale. So calorie deficit alone is not the solution. And obviously better testing. So fasting insulin is also not a common part of the blood panel. And a lot of medical professionals don't test for it unless you ask for it. So you want to make sure that you're actually getting your insulin levels checked, not just your glucose levels. So this would include getting your HOMA IR test done, getting fasting insulin done, and getting these tests done on more of a recurring cadence so that you're able to keep track of your numbers. And so just like how insulin resistance is unique in PCOS, right? It's selective insulin resistance. Your metabolism is also different in the universe of PCOS. Now, you might have heard yourself say, or you might have heard your friends say that, hey, I'm not losing weight because my metabolism is slow. But to really understand and unpack what this statement means, what exactly is metabolism? So when people say that my metabolism is slow, what they mean is that my body is burning lesser calories than it should, even though I'm doing everything right. So I'm eating nice, I'm eating healthy, I'm working out every day, I'm sleeping well, but my metabolism is slow, so I will not burn fat. But to understand metabolism, we need to understand three key concepts: BMR, the thermic effect of food, and NEAT, N-E-A-T, non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So let's pick each one and just dive into it. Okay, so BMR is known as your basal metabolic rate. It is also known as your body's maintenance mode. So BMR is basically the minimum number of calories your body will burn at rest if you don't do anything at all, like you just sit around, do nothing at all. These are the minimum number of calories your body will burn just to keep you alive. So just to keep your heart beating, your brain thinking, allow air to go inside your lungs and out of your lungs, right? To keep the blood pumping. And this is 60 to 70% of the total amount of calories your body expends in a day. Now, what happens in the universe of PCOS though is your body burns 400 kilocalories lesser than other women who don't have PCOS. Why? Because biologically, your hormones are not at the same levels. So the hormonal imbalance actually has such wide-reaching effects that your BMR is at a disadvantage too. So you burn 400 calories less. So if your friend's BMR is say 1200, your BMR is likely around 800. And in certain cases, we've seen that women with selective insulin resistance, their BMR might be 700 calories lower. Now moving on to NEAT, which is non-exercise activity thermogenesis. Have you heard of 10K steps? That habit that is so popular. Now 10K steps was devised so that you could boost your NEAT, which is 10 to 20% of your daily calorie expenditure, which basically comes from fidgeting, moving around, going from one room to another, basically, showcasing signs of extra energy. And if you walk 10K steps, between your work day, get up every 30 minutes or so, then you are going to maximize your NEAT, which is your NEAT. But did you know, in the PCOS universe, when your body is in a state of stress, inflammation, digestive distress where you're like feeling bloated, you're feeling lethargic, you're not going to move that much. So your NEAT, you're never really maximizing your NEAT. So your NEAT percentage goes down as low as 2% or even in some cases 1%. Now, NEAT can vary a lot between people. Some people in both universes, normal and in PCOS, we've noticed that people can burn up to 300 or 400 calories a day just by fidgeting and moving around. But if your body resists that, like it does not want to, it's not that active, as a person, it also depends on who you are as a person, right? So if you're somebody who does not like to really leave their desk in general, right? You're going to move around a lot less. And so your NEAT for the day might just be 50 calories. There was a meta-analysis done, which is basically a study of studies that showcased that when you're on a low-carb diet, your NEAT is at its lowest because the lack of available energy, because you're on a low-carb diet, so not enough carbohydrates, you tend to move a lot less. So when your NEAT reduces, you won't feel spontaneous. You won't feel like just going out for a coffee with your friend. You'll be like, nah, let me just be at home on my bed. I'm too lazy. I don't want to go anywhere. You start feeling that way. So a low carb diet leads to a slowdown of your metabolism, especially for NEAT. And so along those lines, if we look at the third concept, which is TEF, or thermic effect of food, which is basically the amount of energy that your body burns to digest food, it was found that if you are following a low-carb diet, then your thermic effect of food also drops because you're technically under-eating or, you're skipping meals. There are not enough calories that you're consuming. There's not enough volume that you're consuming for your body to burn it. Now, if you eat high-protein food, that's going to obviously help because protein is very tough to digest, and so your body has to expend more calories to digest it. So the summation of all of these three different variables, BMR, NEAT, and TEF, is what contributes to metabolism. So I want you to think of each of these three pillars as lights. Now, if each of them are glowing very dimly, that's a sign of slow metabolism. So especially if you do a lot of crash dieting, a lot of intermittent fasting, focusing on eating very little food in a day mainly, or keto, or just low carb in general, then you will notice that all three of these lights are getting dimmer and dimmer and dimmer. So it might feel like you're eating lesser than ever before just to see the number drop on the scale, but you also don't feel very good. You don't feel vital. You don't feel like you have this boundless amount of energy to do whatever you want, and rather something is kind of capping you. And some women also report brain fog as a very early symptom of slow metabolism, where they're like, it's 10 a.m., but I'm just not attentive in the meeting. I don't know what's going on. I had my coffee, I had my breakfast, but I'm still not attentive. And these are some of the ripple effects of a slow metabolism that we see. So over time, with slow metabolism, your body adapts into what we call as a survival mode, where it's kind of exactly fighting for survival. So your body learns to, run on less calories. And how this affects your hormones is your leptin goes down, your cortisol goes up, and your thyroid goes down. So slow metabolism is basically your body adjusting to lack of fuel, lack of nutrients. And it's basically saying that, okay, because I don't have enough energy, let's not go out and get a walk in even though it's a sunny day. I just want you to know that it's not discipline. It's not that, you're not a peppy person. It's just that the way our hormones behave inside us governs a lot about how we feel and what we do with our time. So now that I've introduced a little bit of what low carb does to your hormones, let's dive deep specifically into the thyroid hormone, one of the most important hormones in the body that gets significantly impacted when you go on a low carb diet. But for me to really walk you through how and why this impact is so deep, we need to first understand why you need to care about this hormone, right? Thyroid determines the pace at which your body burns fat. So I want you to think about thyroid as the thermostat of the body. It controls the temperature of your body. It controls how warm you feel, how much energy you would have. It controls how easily you lose fat, and how much energy and how much free energy you have to, move around and to just live your life. Now, if your thyroid is on point, you will feel clear, focused, energetic, spontaneous. You will feel warm, able to do things just like normal. Your body will respond to nutrition and training as well, and you will also lose fat. But if your thyroid is underactive, then everything slows down. You start to feel the exact opposite. So you would feel a bit colder, lazier, demotivated, not too excited to do things. It's like your body has gone into power saving mode. So what exactly is a thyroid gland producing? So it makes two main hormones. We have the T4 hormone, which is an inactive form of energy. It's like stored energy, right? It's not readily usable. But it's T4. It's called as T4. And then we have T3, which is called as the active form of the thyroid hormone. And this is the one that actually kind of gives you the energy. It fuels your brain energy. It helps you feel more active. It also helps with digestion, period regularity, mood balance. Now, here's an insight you might not know. Most of your T3 actually comes from conversion of the T4, which is the inactive energy that we talked about. It comes from the conversion of T4. And this conversion happens inside your gut, inside your liver, and in your muscles. So now when you drop your carbs for too long, the body does not think of it as, yay, we're going to lose fat. Instead, it starts thinking of it as, oh shoot, we don't have enough energy. And this kicks off a hormone chain reaction, because now the body gets into this zone of preparation to survive. So here are some practical effects that you might see. Firstly, you start feeling cold, especially cold hands and cold feet, even if no one else is really feeling it. So the temperature starts to become more temperature sensitive. Even though you've had a full night's sleep, you're not feeling awake the next day morning. Even though you've had coffee, you kind of feel a little bit sluggish. Your digestion slows down, which leads to a lot of bloating and digestive distress internally. You might even get constipation or diarrhea because of this. You gain weight easily, even though you've not really increased your calories or reduced your, exercising or anything like that. And you just in general feel puffy, bloated. You just kind of feel flat and demotivated overall. This is called as a sluggish metabolism. So low carb is not just about lowering calories, it's lowering the efficacy of your hormones. What was working normally is now not working under normal conditions. So along with thyroid, there are 4 other hormones which get impacted. So I want to introduce you to 4 main characters. So we have leptin, ghrelin, serotonin, and cortisol. So carbs are actually involved at a hormonal signaling level. And this is a very crucial piece of information a lot of women are missing about carbs. It's not just calories. It's not just carbs hold 4 molecules of water. It actually helps how different parts of your body talk to each other. First, let me walk you through what each character does. So leptin basically is known as a satisfaction hormone. It tells your brain that we are satisfied, we are safe, and we can thrive now. The ghrelin is known as your hunger hormone. This is what triggers the enzymes in your gut, the hydrochloric acid, prepares your body to receive fuel and metabolize it. Now the serotonin is known as your feel-good hormone. And this hormone basically gets released when you're doing, when you're working out, when you're engaging in productive activities, going out on a walk, playing with your dog. Serotonin is also responsible for supporting sleep and mood. It also helps with reducing of PMS flare-ups. And then we have the cortisol, which is nothing but your main stress hormone. And cortisol has a natural rhythm of, rising in the morning, and then towards the end of the day, it starts sort of, depleting. But cortisol typically rises when carbs are restricted. And then it stays elevated for much longer. It does not drop that easily, even during times when it should start dropping. So abnormality of cortisol function. Now, when you go low carb, leptin drops. So it signals your brain that you're in starvation mode. Secondly, ghrelin increases, which means you start feeling hungrier and hungrier, almost at a primal level, and more food obsessed. So this is when a lot of people notice food noise coming in. Serotonin starts dropping, which means that you have low mood, poor sleep, your PMS flares up. You're also a little bit more irritable, and your cortisol spikes. So this is when you feel more stressed in general, you feel wired, but drained, and your insulin resistance worsens. Now, as we already know that in the PCOS universe, your hormonal balance is already fragile. Cortisol is 30% higher than normal, insulin is 30% lower than normal. So think about this. When you go low carb, you're already signaling these hormones to behave weirdly. And in the PCOS universe, things are already off. So it's kind of a double whammy. So it tends to amplify every single symptom, and not in a good way. So this is why a lot of women tend to report that when they go on a low carb diet, the first thing that disappears is their period. I don't know if you've heard of this, but in the bodybuilding universe, when women kind of lose body fat to compete on stage for physique competitions, they typically report something called as amenorrhea, which is the loss of a period, especially when they are at very, very low body fat percentages. And this is because since they need to get to that level of stage lean, which is like a single digit body fat percentage, they kind of need to do it quickly. They need to do it in a 12-week or a 14-week period, because typically that's how they prepare for competitions. And the first macronutrient that goes is carbohydrates. And when carbohydrates are dropped, as I just discussed, a lot of your hormones get impacted. And because of which, the first thing that they lose is their period. So I had a client who actually decided to follow that. She went on an 800 calorie diet because that's what some online macro calculator told her to do. And she was promised that if she does this, she will lose 2 kilos per week. And she was blown away. She's like, wow, let me do this. She actually stopped after 2 to 3 weeks. She lost a total of 3 kilos, but that's not it. That's not it. She lost her stamina. She lost her period. And guess what? 3 months after she stopped her diet, she still didn't have her period. So her hormones, before she started this whole low carb 800 calorie thing, were probably like this. They were balanced. And then because of this strict extreme diet, they became like this. And guess what? It's very easy for hormones to go this far apart, this out of balance. But it's very difficult. It takes a lot of strategic planning with nutrition, workout, sleep, and patience, of course, for that to come back to normal. So while she lost her period because of 2 weeks of dieting, what I'm trying to tell you is that it took her 3 to 5 months for her body to feel safe again to actually naturally ovulate. So you understand one thing, that the body needs enough energy to do pretty much everything, right? And that's why we have numbers like BMR, TEF, NEAT, like we talked about in the metabolism. But when you deprive your body of this fuel, the body starts trimming activities, because it's like, look, we don't have enough energy for it. And so ovulation is one of those things that kind of takes a hit. Your body's like, we don't have enough carbs, we don't have enough energy, so we don't have enough fuel to make reproductive hormones. So here's what happens inside. When you drop your carbs too low, your hypothalamus gets a signal that there isn't enough energy to ovulate, to release an egg. So it reduces the output of GnRH, which is what actually triggers the production of the luteinizing hormone and the FSH hormone. Now, these are the two hormones that you need to ovulate. So if you have no ovulation, you don't have a real period. And then you have more irregular cycles. And because of that, if you're planning to conceive, you cannot predict conception. And to add to that, because of low carb, serotonin production also reduces, so PMS flares up. And then you could obviously have more inflammation that's happening because all of your hormones are now out of whack. So a lot of people usually do low carb because, they want to get their period back. But this is where it actually backfires really badly. So now most people think that doing low carb will mean direct fat loss. But if you're not careful and if your carbs are way too low and you're also doing it for an extended period of time, you could lose one of the most expensive tissues in your body, which is muscle. So what happens is that in an attempt to lose fat, you cut calories. A lot of your calories come from carbs because, like I said, social media influence, right? And once you cut your calories way too low, your body doesn't have enough energy needed for daily activities. So it starts tapping into the stored energy that it does have, which is in the form of muscle. And this is what we call as catabolism. Now, this matters because muscle is your metabolic engine. It's what keeps your metabolism high. It's what keeps your BMR high, your NEAT high, your thermic effect of food high. So muscle also improves your insulin sensitivity, as we know. So in the PCOS universe, you need to build muscle not just for vanity, but to help your body become more insulin sensitive, almost to defend yourself against the selective insulin resistance, which has been biologically determined for you already. Especially if you're somebody who immediately regains the fat after hopping off from a low carb diet, that's a classic indicator that you might be carrying very less muscle mass. Now, there is a saying that dieting means going to bed hungry. And it's kind of okay to feel hungry and, to feel uncomfortable, especially when you're trying to lose fat, and it's all part of the process. So a lot of women are conditioned to just push through the pain, right? We give ourselves this tough love approach and we're like, nope, I am going to let my stomach growl, even though I have an important meeting tomorrow morning, even though it's 2 a.m. at night and I'm not getting sleep. But because I want to lose these 5 pounds of fat, I'm going to push through the pain and let my hunger roar. But this is where things go a little bit off. In PCOS, especially in the luteal phase of PCOS, where your progesterone levels are higher than normal, the ghrelin hormone essentially is at its peak. And it takes a long time for ghrelin to come back. So as you know, ghrelin is the hunger hormone. Now, stack low carb on top of that. What happens is that your satiety becomes so low, which means hunger becomes primal. And when hunger is primal, you cannot resist binging. And this is when a lot of women go on to these binge fests where they consume, endless sort of portions of food, and they wipe out the entire calorie deficit that they created for the week. And then that begins a series of guilt trip where you are now completely lost because you're like, oh shoot, I don't know why I did this. And you start blaming yourself and your willpower. But in actuality, hunger is an indicator of nutrient deficiency, where your body is like, look, I don't have enough fuel to just do regular things. Like, I don't have enough fuel to even produce serotonin so that you can get good sleep at night. So it keeps you awake. Hunger is not a bad signal. It's a sign that your body is not receiving the right kind of fuel. Another big disadvantage of the low-carb diet is the amount of gut issues that it creates, especially in the universe of PCOS, because you already have gut dysbiosis, where the balance of your good and bad gut bacteria is already off due to hormonal imbalance in particular. And what happens is that when you go on a low-carb diet, you tend to cut out a lot of the fruits, vegetables, sort of fibrous grains, and you focus more into like fats and meat or, fats and protein. So typically your body, your gut does not get enough of the prebiotic and the probiotic to feed the good gut bacteria. And so because of that, you notice a lot of constipation, bloating, gut motility issues. A lot of your nutrient absorption also goes away. Because remember, it's actually these good gut bacteria that help your stomach break down the food into absorbable things, which are then released into your bloodstream. Going on a low-carb diet is actually detrimental for your gut health. And it actually makes your progress feel invisible because you are always puffy, you're always inflamed, you're always bloated. and you're kind of blaming something, but you need to know that it's actually your plan. That including more fiber in your diet is actually very beneficial for your particular biology. And finally, I want to talk about how low carb diet in particular takes away from the very flexibility of the fitness lifestyle. Now, you might have heard a lot of people say that, look, when I'm dieting, I will not meet you for lunch. I will not go out. There are no vacations. There is no travel. But what if life happens and you need to travel? So picture this. You've been doing a low carb diet for, say, 3 weeks straight. Every macro counted, you lost a bunch of weight already. You're feeling fantastic, right? And then suddenly your boss tells you that you need to travel somewhere for work. Or you suddenly hit your period, right? It's possible after 3 weeks. Now, suddenly what happens is you can't meal prep. You are running on fumes because you've been eating low carb, so your body doesn't really have any reserve energy to help you during these push periods at work. You're forced to take a break from your diet and you start eating everything normally again. And suddenly the weight just shoots back up, and this triggers panic inside you. And now you're all confused and you're afraid and you feel like you're a failure. And this is what actually wears a lot of women out. They get frustrated because they are just losing and gaining the same 5 pounds over and over again, and while their hormones are just slowly shifting away from balance. So here's what really happened is that the low carb diet removed the very flexibility. It removed the buffer we need, especially when life gets messy. You need your body to support you by giving you that energy during that push time. So if low carb is not the approach to help you with PCOS symptoms or, help you manage PCOS, then what works? What kind of diet actually works? And I'm going to dive into just that right now. The Mediterranean diet is one of the best diets out there, especially if you have hormonal imbalances like PCOS. Let me explain. Now, the Mediterranean diet is not just a buzzword. It actually originated around the regions of the Mediterranean Sea, particularly in Greece. And it's a diet that is known for its anti-inflammatory properties, mainly. So people in this region actually have reported lower rates of obesity, heart disease, lower hormonal imbalance in women in particular, specifically because of this diet. So one gold standard 2015 study actually revealed that women with PCOS who tend to follow the Mediterranean diet, they actually reported the least amount of symptoms and flare-ups, and actually were able to control their PCOS from worsening into prediabetes or diabetes. This diet is also known for its high adherence, which means that people who follow the Mediterranean diet are able to stick to it longer term. And why? And this is where things get really interesting, because you already know why you can't stick to a low carb diet, like the fatigue, the digestive issues, just the hunger is crazy in a low carb diet, which is the exact opposite in Mediterranean. So I have a list of ingredients which I'm going to now walk you through, which you can actually eat in this diet. So you can have fruits like, berries, apples, oranges. You could have vegetables, like especially the non-starchy ones like spinach, eggplant, tomatoes, cucumbers, healthy fats like olive oil, avocado, nuts and seeds, lean proteins like fish, chicken, eggs, particularly omega-3 rich, fatty acid fish like salmon. You can have whole grains like oats, barley, wheat, and obviously a lot of spices like, garlic, rosemary, chives, oregano. So this is not a restrictive diet. It's actually a pleasurable diet. It's a whole food diet. It kind of helps you lean into, single ingredient foods. The recipes in the Mediterranean diet are super tasty. They are sustainable, so you can stick to them for a long time. And the benefits on your body, especially on your hormones, are so good that this is touted as one of the best diets for women with PCOS. And guess what? This is very easy to translate into the Indian diet in particular, A lot of women feel, especially South Asian women feel, that they need to step away from their Indian roots and adopt a complete Western culture diet if they want to see any kind of fat loss. And I would say that there's a bit of nuance missing there, because the Indian plate of spices, whole foods, grains, meat, vegetables is actually very close to the Mediterranean food. It's just that we need to work with our portions a bit better. So leaning more into, following more of the my plate approach, where you have half the plate filled with vegetables, a nice quarter for protein, where you're using tofu to make your tofu curry, paneer curry, or you're making some like a chicken dish, of course, chicken curry. We all know that chicken tikka masala is great. And then you have your grain source or your carb source, where you could use like sweet potatoes, you could use beetroot, you could use quinoa, millets. If you want to have some roti, you can make like a multi-flour roti, like a ragi roti or something similar. So tweaking your Indian plate, choosing all of your Indian flavors, because they have a lot of anti-inflammatory properties. And as I'm going to get into that. So for example, your dals and lentils, they are packed with fiber. They have a lot of micronutrients like, like zinc and magnesium in particular. You have your millets, such as, rajgira and your chana flour, which are smart carbs, and they actually offer like a slow glucose release. And they keep your insulin steady. Very important, because as you know, you have selective insulin resistance, and this is when you need your insulin to stay as low as possible. So what I'm talking about now is the insulin sensitivity boosting foods. And in gut boosting and anti-inflammatory properties, as you already know, we have turmeric, we have fenugreek, we have cumin, ginger, garlic, that these are all staples in all of our Indian curries. And you also have high satiety options, like we do your egg burji, we do your paneer, you make a besan chila, stuff it with paneer. It's an amazing high protein, anti-inflammatory, super insulin balanced meal. So these meals are not just comforting, they are staples which you can eat until you're like 70, right? You're never going to feel like you're on a diet, because this is a regular part of your lifestyle. And that's what I want you to think about as you, begin planning your own journey for PCOS management, is what can I eat that is also tasty, that is comforting, that is giving me this joy that I can keep doing it forever, while internally my body is also happy. My hormones are happy, my thyroid is thriving, my insulin is balanced, and everything is great. And this is where I feel like a cross between Mediterranean and Indian diet is just fantastic. So you're giving your body the tools to reduce inflammation, to heal your gut, boost higher gut health, to support ovulation, and obviously reduce your cravings and make you feel a lot more in control of your hunger. I want to give you a few pointers as a health coach. And so let's just take a few steps back. Let's zoom out a little. Weight loss should not be the only goal for you, especially if you are battling or you have been battling PCOS symptoms for a long time. Your goal should be hormone healing, ensuring that your hormones try to get as balanced as they possibly can. And the reason why a lot of women, even after losing weight, they feel bloated, they feel inflamed, they feel moody, is because their only focus was on the scale. Like, I want to lose X kilos. I don't care how it happens. I need to get there. And that one-dimensional thinking is actually not going to make you thrive inside, because in order for you to heal your hormones, you need to look at the big picture. You need to have the patience of actually eating foods that might initially feel like, is this even working for me? Because I'm not seeing this initial 2-kilo drop like my low-carb diet friend did. So instead of looking at the number on the scale, I want you to think about your symptoms. Think about, is my acne reducing? Is my hair thinning, getting better? Do you have better mood and deeper sleep? Are you able to control your hunger, right? Even though you've not eaten for a long time, because you're no longer sort of depriving your body. Do I feel like I'm in my 20s even though I'm in my 40s? Like, these are all goals that you should chase. And once you hit all of these goals, you can essentially confirm with blood reports, of course, that your body is now back in a state of hormonal balance. And when your body is in this safe state, the weight loss will happen. Your metabolism will kick into higher gear because now all of your hormones which are responsible for fat mobilization are firing on all cylinders. And so you no longer need to force it. It's a natural side effect of your hormones getting balanced. And once you do achieve that weight loss with your hormones being balanced, you achieve a state of food freedom where now you kind of know exactly which foods, which fruits and vegetables, what type of meals are working for your body, what makes you feel good, what makes you feel less bloated, what gives you a clear head even at 8 p.m. at night. So this state of food freedom is kind of like this dream state for a lot of women who are on their fitness journey, because this is where you're no longer afraid of food. You're no longer afraid of gaining the weight back because you've now figured out exactly what ingredients and what foods are going to help me heal my hormones, keep my hormones balanced, and hence keep my fat as low as possible. So if you're somebody who's ever been on a fitness journey for the 10th time, because you're for the 10th time trying to lose the same 5 kilos that you've been trying to lose for the previous 9 times, here's my message for you. It's not your fault, firstly. It's not that you are indisciplined or that you don't know proper macro counting or that you're lazy in your workouts. So I want you to first rid yourself of all this blame that you've been putting on yourself. It's just unhealthy, puts so much pressure, and it just kind of takes the joy out of fitness. If you want to blame something, blame your plan. Blame the fact that you chose low carb, and that's it. A restrictive diet where you only eat leaves and meat, or you cut out rice, roti, cut out all of the comfort foods that actually make you feel energetic in general, is not something you'll be able to sustain for more than a few weeks at a time. And when you do decide to hop off it, as you already know, you're going to regain the fat again because you won't know how to eat once you get off the restrictive plan. So thinking about more of a sustainable system, like I talked about the Mediterranean diet, coming up with recipes that align up with the Mediterranean diet and also contain your Indian flavors, specifically the foods that you love. This is the only kind of diet that's going to work long term for you because you're going to actually enjoy it and actually see benefits from it. It's like double win, right? So here's what I want to leave you with, right? You can't fix your body by bullying your hormones. You cannot fix your PCOS by just grinding it out, by forcing conditions within your body where your body is sort of in this fight or flight survival mode and it's got like no choice but to, slow down functions and cause more of the symptoms that you've been trying to run away from. Healing PCOS is about nourishment. It's about making your body feel safe again. It's about feeling normal again. It's about knowing that you do have control over your body and that it's not taken away from you like you thought it was for so many years. You deserve a plan that works with your body and not against it. There is a smarter, softer, and a much more sustainable way to approach PCOS. The more you learn to trust your body, the more it will surprise you with all the amazing things that it can do. I hope you found this useful. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next one.